I always do feel like I have so much more energy in the summer than I do in the winter. And I feel more motivated to make more drawings and to do more things and just get things done. And as far as when it comes to drawings that I make and all that, like in the winter, I really just don't feel like doing anything. That includes things other than drawing. Like I don't feel like going anywhere or doing nothing. I feel unmotivated. So I have thought about maybe living somewhere else other than where I'm at now, where it's always cold. But everywhere is just so expensive that it is a place that has better weather. Rent is a lot more. The overall cost of living is a lot more. And because of that, I would then have to work way more hours than I currently work now. And then I just wouldn't really have any time to draw. I would just be working all day. I would never have any time to make any doodles at all. And I think that there's kind of a balance of trying to, you work like your 9 to 5 job, as they say, and the job, like the stuff that you do outside of your job that you enjoy. I mean, for some people, their job is what gives them meaning. Like if I was making my living from drawing, then I would wake up every day and have more motivation to do more drawings and get more things done. I think that, I guess it does allow you to kind of relax a bit, but I can relax in the summer if I want to. I just sit down for a little bit. And in the winter, I can have coffee and do all these things, but yet I just don't feel like doing anything. In the winter, I can sleep 10 hours and have coffee and exercise and do everything I can to make myself feel better. And I will have less energy than I will when it's nice out and sunny and warm. So in the winter, 10 hours of sleep with coffee and eating extremely healthy and being as relaxed as I can be, being as stress-free as I can possibly make myself. I feel better in the summer with 5 hours of sleep and no coffee. I never actually started feeling constantly tired all the time like this until I was living in a colder state. But as I said, everywhere that's warmer to live is just so expensive. And there's the whole thing of, moving, getting everything that you have and transporting it, deciding on if you're just going to fly there and live there, or if you're going to bring everything with you. You've got to find a job. You've got to figure out where you want to live, what area you want to live in. What is it going to be like there? Do you want to live in a bigger city, a smaller city, a small town, out in the country, or maybe just in the middle of nowhere, away from everyone and everything? But then if you're living out in the middle of nowhere, away from everyone and away from everything, then maybe there's less jobs and you've got to drive an hour or 2 hours to get to work at every day. So then the money you save and the cost of living, like you might have to work more hours in a place that costs more, but having that short commute saves you the amount of time. So let's say you have a job that is 40 hours a week, but you only have, a 5 or 10 minute drive to work. No, wait. Let me re-explain. Let's say you have a job that is 50 hours a week, but you only have a 5 or 10 minute commute to work. And then another job is 40 hours a week, but it takes 1 to 2 hours a day to drive to work. So then you've got the cost of gas and the time you spend driving per day. So if you work 5 days a week, then that means you're spending at least 10 hours a week driving. And that's this time that you're not getting paid for that. You're actually, the cost of gas is costing you more. But it does depend on the job and what you're doing, I guess. I mean, I know for some people, maybe if the job is less stressful or they enjoy it more, they'll take a pay cut. But there's just so many things to consider and think about, with just moving everything and being in a new place, and maybe you move there and all the people, you don't know anybody. You don't know anybody there. You get to try to make new friends, or maybe you're just not a very social person. That's not a big deal to you. But there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to that, and it's just, there's so much involved in it. Like it seems easy, right? Just somebody wants to move, they can just go somewhere else. But I mean, maybe if you're a minimalist, like all you have is a laptop, like you have a suitcase and you can fit all of your clothes in your laptop in it, and yeah, probably moving everything would be pretty easy. But I think if you own some things, like me, I own my drawing table and computer and camcorders and all that stuff. And actually, I have other things like my bed and dresser and all that I would have to move if I ever did consider moving. But I have thought about it, but I still have to take into consideration the cost of the living. Like if I have to work, instead of working 40 or 50 hours a week, I have to work 70 hours a week, and the cost of living's more. I'd have to work 100 hours a week then to have the same amount of savings, and I would have just no time. But I mean, any place that you live, like if you look online and you'll see average salary, income, or you'll look up cost of living on average. I've looked at some states and they'll say average cost of living is this much for a house. That's the average, but depending on where it's at, like in the state, let's say if you look at the average cost of living as the state overall, then it's actually probably going to be higher than what you would end up paying for rent, probably, because not everyone is going to be trying to get a place that's very expensive. For example, if it's an area like where the average cost of living is, let's say the rent is $1,200 a month, or like that much, and that's the average. Well, it's the average, but if you're looking for cheaper places, you could probably maybe get rent for $600 a month or $700 a month. If you're really out in the middle of absolutely nowhere and there's just nothing around, you might somehow be able to get rent for like $400 or $500 a month. But you have to drive like 3 or 4 hours to find anything, which that'd be kind of an interesting situation. I mean, what if you lived, I guess you'd have to, like if you were 3 hours or 4 hours away from a gas station and you lived out in the middle of nowhere, like what, I think you would have a problem if you forgot to put gas in your vehicle and your car was almost empty and it was 3 hours to the next gas station, that would you probably have to, I don't know, you couldn't, well, I guess you could probably walk that far, but probably take you, what, several days. Maybe you can do the math on that. If you're driving 50 miles, well, it's 150 miles. If it takes 3 hours to drive somewhere, and you're going 50 miles an hour, 50 times 3 is 150 miles. So how long would it take to walk 150 miles if your car was out of gas because you forget to fill up the gas tank? Anyways, so yeah, there's that to consider, like how far. I mean, that's kind of, I guess that would kind of be rare. I mean, you'd have to be out in the middle of nowhere, like out in some desert in the mountains to be 4 hours away from a gas station, I would imagine. But yeah, like if you look up the average cost of living in a state and it's a certain amount, well, that's the average. It doesn't mean that there are areas that are not cheaper than that. So you could probably get cheaper rent, but yeah, it all just depends. It all just depends. Like I've been to some places, different states, to where like the food is cheaper, and maybe there's, you know, no sales tax or income tax, yet the rent is like triple or double. Like you could have a place to where, you know, the rent is only, if you're really lucky, like really, really lucky, maybe you'll have a rent that's like $400 or $500 for like a really tiny place. And there might be a different state or location that has no income tax, or maybe no sales tax. But then you go there and like the rent is just outrageous, like $1,200 a month or $1,500 or more or something like that. Like the same, for the same apartment, for the same amount of space. And sometimes there's places that the rent is twice as much for half the amount of space. Like you'll have a place that in some state or an area that the rent is $500 and you got a washer and a dryer and a fridge and like a really, like you have a little bit of a yard and your own parking and a stove and microwave for $500. And it's hard to find, it's rare. And then you have another place that has, you've got to buy your own stove and microwave and fridge and freezer. And you might have to pay for parking. And you have no yard at all. And no washer or dryer. And you got to take your clothes to a laundromat. And then the rent's like $1,200 a month. It's kind of crazy. I've lived at 1, 2, I've actually lived, most of the places I've lived at, I've lived there for, I think I live on average at a location for about 3 years, it seems like, and then I move. Maybe like 3 to, well, I think if it wasn't for me moving like 10 years ago, I probably would have been living in the same place for like 5 years. And the place I lived in before I moved to where I'm living at now, I was there for 5 years, but it's an average of let's see, I'm trying to do this all in my head because I've moved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I moved 7 or 8 times in the past 15 years. But I think 3 of those times, 4 of those times I moved was all within a short period of time. And the first time I moved was, I think it was, the first time I moved was 3 years after I moved up here. Anyways, it's like, probably if you don't count the average of how often I move, like that short time period where I moved many, like 3 or 4 times within 3 years. If you exclude that, I probably move on average every 3 to 5 years. So I don't know. I mean, yeah. But I don't know how long I'm going to live here. I've lived here now for about, let's see, almost half a year. And it doesn't feel like I've lived here that long. It feels like it's been maybe 2 months. And yet I've been here half a year already. The last place I lived at, I lived there for 5 years. And it didn't seem like it was 5 years. It felt like maybe 2 years. I don't know. It's just kind of weird sometimes how time is. Time can go by so quickly. And you're just like, where did time go? And then other times it seems like it's moving so slowly. But as far as moving and going to different places and living and all that, I got so much thinking to do when it comes to that. Like what state? What place would be affordable that has better weather than a place that where I live now, where it's, I would say where I live now, in October the weather is strange because it's fall and it'll go from hot to cold. The weather here where I live is really weird in October. A little bit November, but October, a little bit of November, and then March and April. Like this month, we have weeks to where it's 80 degrees, and then the next day it will actually snow. Like today it's 82 degrees out, and tomorrow it's going to be in the 40s, so the temperature is half. And then for the rest of the week it's going to be gloomy and cloudy, and then all of a sudden it's going to be 85, and then it's going to drop down to like 38, and the next day it's 65, then after that it's 78, then it's 42, then it's back up to 80. So you never even know what the weather is going to be like. It's just changing so rapidly, so often, constantly, that you don't even know if you should bring an umbrella or winter coat or shorts or what. Maybe wear shorts and pajamas, but then I guess if it's hot out that won't work. I don't know. Anyways, I've lived in several different states, and the one I've lived in now for the past, I don't know, like half of my life, I don't like the cold, and I feel so unmotivated because of it, but I'm able to afford it here. And as I talked about before, if I moved somewhere else, it was nice all year. Like what would be a good state? I don't know. I gotta think about that. And I was considering it like 3 years ago. I was actually maybe planning on moving or something, maybe to a different state. But then I don't know, just things changed and life happened. So then I never ended up doing that. So here I am. But as you can see, maybe it's not as bad as earlier. Earlier I was drawing, and in the camera you couldn't really see anything because there was really bright areas in the drawing, and then other areas to where you couldn't see anything. Yeah, what do you think would be a decent place? I mean, for me, I would not want to live in a big city. I like being able to get to places efficiently. I don't want to have to spend 2 hours in traffic and waiting on stoplights and stuff just to drive 5 miles. I'd rather kind of live maybe in like a medium-sized town. Something like I wouldn't want to live in a place where there's like huge giant buildings and a lot of people, because of all the traffic and cost of living is so much more. I would just be working all day just to afford to live there. And but I don't know if I did live out in the middle of nowhere, I do have to consider the extra drive and the job opportunities and everything. So I have to take that in consideration. Probably for me, maybe a medium-sized town. Maybe even a small town would be okay. It kind of depends. I think maybe having a gym would be nice, but I can just work out at home. That's no big deal. A warm place where it's maybe a small to medium-sized town. At what point is it considered a medium-sized town or a large town? Like, what is bigger? Probably, I think a small city would have more population than a large town, I would imagine. It would be like small town. Maybe it would be like middle of nowhere, nobody. So middle of nowhere, small town, medium town, large town, small city, medium city, big city. So maybe something like a small to large town. Maybe I think maybe if I lived in like a small to a large town, preferably like medium sized, but close to a small city, to where if there's something that I absolutely need or something I want to do that's a little bit different, and then I can go there and kind of do some things, but kind of like being able to have some nature around me, but not so much nature to the point to where I have to drive 3 hours to get anywhere. So yeah, there's that. Anyways, I think I have a lot of thinking to do when it comes to that. We'll see. As I said, I don't know how long I'm gonna live in the apartment I'm living in now. I've been here only 6 months, and we'll see. Anyways, I will talk to you all later, and you'll have a good day, and have fun doodling.